Hi everyone, it's Bianca here. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we have episode 4 of my Oxbridge Application Series. If you haven't seen the first and second and third videos already, I'll be linking everything in the description box below, where I essentially talked about my story on how I applied to Oxford and Cambridge, things that you should know before you apply, and also the first part to the personal statement video. So I have two videos on personal statement. This one where I'm going to be talking about my Oxford personal statement, and the one that I already made, episode 3, which was my Cambridge personal statement, and also more tips on how to brainstorm, how to write, etc. Now before I start, just a quick disclaimer. I applied to Cambridge for an MPhil in Development Studies and I actually got in, and for Oxford I applied for MPhil in Economics but I did not get in. But by no means is it saying that my Oxford personal statement is a failure or that my Cambridge personal statement is a success, because when it comes to application there's a lot of things that comes into play, and this is just how I wrote my Oxford personal statement, which is a little bit different than my Cambridge one. My Cambridge one is more personal, this is more academic, so I do recommend you to check out that video if you want to see like a different version. Okay, so the way I'm going to structure this video is I'm going to read my personal statement and then sort of describe to you what I intend to say and what I'm trying to convey for each of the paragraph, and then I'll also talk about what I wish I would have done or things that I would change if I were to be able to do it again. So for the MPhil in Economics for Oxford, this is the prompt. Alright, so first paragraph. A rising tide does not raise all boats. The original metaphor suggesting otherwise encapsulates the concept of a win-win result of economic growth. The very idea where every facet of the society would benefit as the nation's economy takes an upturn. The reality, however, speaks a different truth. For many countries, growing the economy is, to a certain extent, at the expense of increasing or even exacerbating existing inequality. Kuznets, 1955. When I first learned this in my undergraduate studies, it instantly reminded me of what I had observed back in my home country, Indonesia. Whilst in 2018 the economy had expanded almost 7 times its size in 2000, the Gini index had subsequently increased by just shy of 10 points. I wondered if having economic policies and political decisions made by and for the top 1% of the society leaves 99% in a sampan boat made to drown in the rising tide. So in this first paragraph, what I really intend to do is to introduce my interest or my focus, which is inequality. So I applied to economics, and economics is a very wide topic. There's behavioral economics, there's development economics, econometrics, financial economics, and there's just so many things, and you want to be able to show which ones you sort of want to focus in, because that's also what's in the prompt. And so yeah, I chose inequality. And here I also added a hook at the beginning where I say a rising tide does not raise all boats. It's quite widely used, and I think it is very powerful to just start the paragraph, and it sort of already gave the readers this narrative that yes, this person is going to be talking about inequality, because it's quite well known. So that was my hook. And I also added a citation, the Kuznets 1955, to demonstrate my understanding or a little bit of background reading that I've done around this topic. Okay, moving on to the second paragraph. However, reading Stiglitz's Economic Growth and Inequality provides a different perspective, which really intrigued me. What if economic growth and equality can be complementary? He urges a rethinking of the mutual exclusivity between the two that we are so familiar with. That with the right policies, we can break out of the vicious cycle where the rich are absorbing most of the benefit, and eventually narrowing the inequality gap in the society. I found myself in the same stance. Policies can and should be crafted to push narrative of those at the bottom of the pyramid. But how? So in the second paragraph, I introduced a slightly different perspective to this topic, but still citing someone else, because obviously I'm not in a position where I can just this is my opinion. And it also demonstrated that I have done some background reading for this topic. And here I think I'm trying to convey I know different perspectives to the same story. Basically, if you've seen the first paragraph, we talk about how economic growth could lead to more inequality. And in the second paragraph, which is this one, we say how economic growth could actually be harmonious and work to promote equality instead. Alright, third paragraph. Through this economic prism, I reflected upon my experience belonging in 99% where manifestations of inequality are stronger further down the pyramid. As a Chinese Indonesian, we celebrate the Tom Sweeping Day annually, where we drove 6 hours up to my parents' hometown for the ritual. As we cleaned the tombs, many young kids would approach us to help with the ritual in exchange for a small amount of money. I realized that many of these kids in this rural area did not have proper schooling, which further piqued my interest in the issue of inequality. I found relatability in the concept of equality of opportunities as introduced by Stiglitz in The Price of Inequality. The people are the nation's asset. Nevertheless, the system traps those at the bottom in a causal nexus of lacking opportunities, education being the most apparent. Instead, the system must change to break the cycle from perpetuating. The children I met should have been at school, not in the cemetery. Here I showed an example of my observation that led me to, care enough about this subject or this topic, which is inequality. And I think there's a lot of ways that I could have gone about this, a lot of other examples that I could have used. But the reason why I chose this one in specific is because of the contrast and extreme that it gives. I think not every day you would see like children's offering services in a cemetery, and I think this makes this observation unique to myself. It's just not another observation that everyone sees or experiences. Alright, moving on to the fourth paragraph. Taking the lens of education and its relation to human capital and economic growth, Minster's Human Capital and Economic Growth, 1984, and Hanushek et al.'s Education and Economic Growth, 2008, have immensely shaped my views. Minster posits that education attainment, in terms of the years of schooling, only plays a weak positive impact on their income, thus inequality and economic growth. However, I have to agree with Hanushek that one cannot simply compare the impact of a year of schooling in Papua New Guinea to that of Japan. It is the learning and skills that truly matter. So here I showed more of this specific facet of inequality that I'm interested in, and I already mentioned about education in the previous paragraph, but here I specifically talk about education and the relation to human capital and also economic growth. Okay, moving on to the fifth and sixth paragraph, which I'm going to combine. In my active pursuit to understand the gap in the quality of manpower, I've contributed to advocating for the human capital development agenda, especially through the involvement with Indonesians who are working overseas. GIPA's point of view, the adaptation process of overseas qualified Indonesian doctors, was a report I co-authored voicing the aspirations of around 60 overseas qualified Indonesian doctors. And to further our effort, we also engaged with the Ministry of Health and had the opportunity to present this to the Secretary General in 2020. The more I became involved, the more this issue incites my curiosity. And education too has become my first port of call to comprehend this paradox. Through the means of YouTube and Medium blog, with over 300,000 total views, I shared my own story as someone who grew up and went to school in daerah, areas away from the capital city, to motivate and inspire the youth with a similar background as mine. From Palembang to Kupang, I have supported many daerah students fighting for equality higher education through mentoring, and one of them has recently received an offer for their master's degree in the UK. So these two paragraphs are the actual things that I have done in the community. So it kind of shows that I care about this topic so much that I'm really involved and really hands-on to try to be part of the solution to this problem. Last paragraph. However, I know that this is not enough. I want to further my contribution by seeking economic comprehension and knowledge that would guide me in finding the answers by studying MPhil in economics at the University of Oxford. I believe that inequality is humanity's biggest economic and societal problem. Its effects permeate deep into the life of 99% of the global population. That is, 7.7 billion people at the time of writing this essay. I surmise that the alpha and omega retraces to the people and the opportunities given to them to change their life. Education. So this is the closing paragraph where I emphasized that, again, I care so much about this topic. I've done my research, I've done my reading, I got involved in the community, but there's still so much to do, there's so much more to learn and to find out, to figure out that I want to learn, and that's how a degree, and in this case MPhil in economics in Oxford, could help me find the solution or the answer to like all of these rhetorical questions that I've asked in the previous paragraphs. And I also close it off by linking it back to the general issue of inequality instead of my own specific thing. where I said like I believe that inequality is humanity's biggest economic and societal problem, and this just re-emphasizes that this is something that I truly care about and that I want to be a part of the solution for, and especially through the realm of education. When I finished writing this 6 months ago, so it was around January 2021, I thought this was like really great. I thought this was the best essay that I've written in the course of my academic career. I was in love with this essay. I thought it was so well written. I thought it represented me, what I've done, what my interests are, really, really well. But now, 6 months after I wrote it and I like reread everything, I have a different opinion about my essay. I mean, I can definitely see, how some of the paragraphs are a little bit disjointed, and I have basically too many ideas that I want to introduce in this essay. I think I just really want to show that I'm really keen and like I have done all these things, I'm interested in all of these different things, that it kind of made it a little bit noisy and a little bit all over the place. And so I have summarized 3 tips that I would give to myself, the self who are writing this essay, or even to you guys who are currently writing your own essay. Number 1 is to focus. Focus on one specific area or topic that you're really interested in and build your narrative around it. If you want to talk about inequality, talk about inequality. What you understand, what made you think that that is an interest to you, that made you, really care about the topic, and also what you've done academically or non-academically to be part of the solution or to contribute to the research or the society or the community. What I've done here is that I wanted to highlight that I've done this, and that I built my narrative around that instead of my own focus. Obviously, yes, my focus is still the same, it's still inequality, but the way I wrote it was a little bit like the other way around. I knew that I wanted to highlight that I have written a paper on human capital, or on doctors in specific, and I also want to highlight that I have this this platform, and I think I focused too much about that I plan my narrative so that I could include those things in my essay. So instead, what I would change is that I would dive right into the topic of education, inequality, and its impact like right away from the very beginning. So I don't, suddenly first talk about inequality in general, and then suddenly like halfway through the essay I suddenly focus on education inequality and the things that I have done and that I want to highlight. Okay, number 2 is to be academic. So Oxford is a research-heavy university, and especially if you are applying to MPhil or Masters of Philosophy, which is literally a bridge to do a PhD, so it's an equivalent of the first year of doing a PhD in the US. You are expected to have done very rigorous research and have an abundant background knowledge about a topic. Of course, you don't have to have done, groundbreaking research about a topic or, save a life, save the world kind of involvement. Demonstrate that you have done your research and that you know your thing. And I think when you're genuinely curious about a topic, you would have been, just out there and really getting involved and read a lot. And it will come quite naturally in your essay, and you don't have to sort of like scramble and try to find evidences. Of course, don't just anyhow sprinkle citations. Do it when it is necessary and when it's relevant. And I think personally I would also avoid generic and outdated citations. So for instance, for mine, what I would change is, so I cited Kuznets and Mincer in this paper, in this essay, and they're probably like two of the most read papers. I think a lot of first, second year economics student would have this in their reading list and would probably have read about them. So it doesn't really give me an edge, kind of. It doesn't really give it will just sound like, oh yeah, those are the things that I happen to be reading in uni and not something that I do of my own accord because I'm interested in the topic. So I think instead I would also use more current research, maybe those from Stephen Klassen or Robert Barrow or E. Chonghua. Basically the papers that I read for my dissertation, because my dissertation revolves around education inequality. But too bad, I already submitted my application when I was reading all these, but yeah, I would have cited them instead of just like generic papers like Kuznets and Mincer. Okay, number 3 is hook. A hook is very important, especially in the beginning, because you want your reader to keep on reading, obviously, and be interested in what you have to say. But obviously don't put hooks just for the sake of having them or for the sake of putting them. You have to make sure that it is coherent with your narrative. For me, I use the metaphor, the rising tide metaphor. Like I said, it's quite well known. But what I would change is I would find ways to infuse that hook throughout, and especially in like towards the end, because I realized that I didn't really mention anything about it anymore. So maybe in the closing paragraph, to make it more cohesive, I would have probably say something along the lines of, you know, wanting to make sure that the rising tide actually raises all the boats or something like that. I don't know. I haven't thought about it. I did this actually with my Cambridge essay. So I use an analogy for my Cambridge essay, which is a chess analogy, and I actually incorporated it in the almost throughout all of the paragraphs. And if you're interested, go check them out. Link will be somewhere up here and also in the description box. It's episode 3. But yeah, I guess that's overall my take on, you know, my Oxford personal statement and my take on how I could have done it better. Obviously it's not perfect, and it's also a sign that you're growing, because at first I thought it was like brilliant. I thought this was like, there's no way I won't get in. Oh my god, I sound so snobby, but I mean, I ended up not getting in, and after reading this 6 months later, I kind of like see why, because I honestly think that this essay didn't really show that I know what I want to do and know what I'm doing. So yeah, I mean, just to be very, you know, transparent and honest with you guys. But yeah, that's about it of my Oxford personal statement. So if you have learned a thing or two from either my personal statement or the things that I wish I had done or changed in my personal statement, or overall if you enjoy this video, please support me by liking this video and also sharing it to your friends. And also don't forget to subscribe for more contents on studying abroad, and also on the contents of applying to Oxbridge or UK universities mainly. And if you have any requests for me to do any videos, be it just around study abroad in general or on Oxbridge in specific, leave them in the comment section and I'll try to make them. And yeah, thank you so much for watching until the end, and I'll see you in the next one.